Good day, everyone. I am Nicole Jorvel and I will be discussing about the story of Pyramus and Thisbe. So I hope you all would listen until the very end of my report. So now let's start. First, I will be talking about the story of Pyramus and Thisbe, and here are the topics that I will be discussing to all of you. First is the history of the Greek and Roman literature. Second, who is the author or the writer of the said story. Next will be what is the literary theory. And a fourth is, or the last one is, what is the literary text. To start, let's go on the first topic, which is the history of Greek and Roman literature. Greek literature has impacted countless generations all over Europe. Poem, tragedy, comedy, and Western philosophies are just a few of the genres that Greek authors are credited with introducing to the world. So, the people dwelling in the early civilizations of Rome and Greece were referred to as Romans and Greek respectively. Though Rome and Greece are often confused for one another, its inhabitants have obvious differences in timeline, language, architectural abilities, social values, and much more. So this includes the literature itself. Next would be the Roman literature. Ancient Roman literature was written in the Latin language. It maintains an enduring legacy of ancient Rome, its culture, and its people. The earliest Roman literary works were historical epics retelling Rome's early military history, while the later works were poetry, comedies, histories, and tragedies. So, all in all, the Roman and Greek have both literature that are very rich and vast. They both have a creation of good epics, tragedies, and comedies. So, it is informed that Greek literature is older than the Roman literature. To move on, let's talk about the story of Pyramus and Thisbe. Pyramus and Thisbe, there were two young Babylonians who fell in love with each other but were forbidden to marry because their parents would not allow such a match because the two families were engaged in a bitter, long-lasting feud. Pyramus was the son of one family, and Thisbe the daughter of the other family. A wall separated the two families, houses, but there was a crack in it. Pyramus and Thisbe would meet and speak to each other in secret, using the crack in a wall to communicate with each other. So that's the picture shown on the screen. That's Pyramus and Thisbe, who tried to communicate with each other through a crack in the wall. Next would be when Thisbe showed up on the night of their secret rendezvous, she couldn't see Pyramus who hadn't arrived yet, but she saw a lion with the blood dripping from its mouth, having devoured some unfortunate prey. Thisbe grew scared, so she ran away, dropping her scarf behind as she fled. The lion took the scarf in its mouth and tore it to pieces. When Pyramus showed up, he found Thisbe's scarf torn to bits and covered in blood, and there is no sign of Thisbe. Assuming the worst, he took out his sword and stabbed himself. Eager to join his beloved, so he thought in the afterlife he is unable to go on living without her. So in this story, fate has a bigger impact in Pyramus and Thisbe's life than you think. No? Pyramus and Thisbe is a story about two lovers who killed themselves because they thought one other died. Pyramus thought Thisbe got eaten by a lion, so he killed himself. Then Thisbe returned and killed her. So as you can see in the picture shown, there is a mulberry tree. So what is the mulberry tree represent all about? So when Pyramus' blood stains the mulberry bush or the fruit, when they both killed themselves out of love for each other, the gods took pity on them. The blood they shed for each other represents the red. of the mulberry fruit. That's the essence, or that's the fruit all about. It's the mulberry fruit all about. Then next, let's go on to a little bit background of the story. This story was written down in 8 AD, appearing in Ovid's Metamorphoses, a 15-volume continuous epic poem spanning the creation of the world through his own time. The story is part of the fourth book of Metamorphoses, a long narrative poem by Ovid about mythological, legendary, and historical characters and circumstances that undergo a transformation. Metamorphosis is consisted out of 246 stories of mythological thematic. The stories are about love troubles, have a lot of dramatic turns, betrayals, doubts, and everything unrolls amongst gods. So now let's move on to who is the author or the writer of this story. So here is the picture of the author. Okay. So in his early life, his name is Publius Ovidius Naso, also known as Ovid. He is born in Solmo, Italy in March 20, 43 BC, and he died at the age of 61. So in his early life, his father was wealthy and intended for him to become a lawyer. He gave Ovid an excellent education, including study under great rhetoricians or the masters of language and speech. Ovid also studied in Athens, Greece, and lived for almost a year in Sicily. His father convinced him to return to Rome, where he served in various minor legal positions, but he disliked the work and lacked political ambitions. So in his early work, he was almost always on the theme of love. He wrote three short books of verses known as the Immortus, or the Love. And his own masterpiece is generally considered to be his Metamorphosis. So this includes the famous Pyramus and Thisbe story. Next would be the literary theory. Pyramus and Thisbe were willing to do anything to be together. Not even death can keep them apart. That is the real essence of the story. And this story explains about two lovers doing anything they can to see each other. Eventually, the female character does something that causes major confusion, which leads to the drastic outcome, the deaths of the lovers. So it is almost like the story of Romeo and Juliet. So that's the story of Pyramus and Thisbe. Next would be, what is the literary text of the story? So the genre of the story, it is the combination of a romance and tragedy. So when we say a tragedy, this is a literary genre in which human suffering is emphasized through repeated misfortune. This is often used to refer to types of plays but can apply to a narrative literature as well. So it is known that the story of Pyramus and Thisbe is a long narrative poem. That's the literary text. And here are my references or the sources of information about my report. One, I sincerely appreciate your attention today, and that brings us to the end. I thank you all for being here with me and taking the time to patiently listen to what I had. I wish you all a blessed day, and once again, this is Nicole Jerfella Livor signing off.